Time management. You already know that it means everything in this business because the one thing that doesn't change is the deadline. The quickest and easiest way to get a handle on your own day is to do what's called backtiming it. And you'll start right after the morning editorial meeting, and if you're working the night side shift, that is after the 2 p.m. editorial meeting. So, once you've been assigned your story, you can start to backtime your day. Producers usually have a rough preliminary idea of what they want for their shows. For example, the 5 p.m. producer will know if they want a package from you. That means if you're a package in the 5, you're probably a VOSOT of that same story in the 6. It can obviously work the other way around as well. And of course, this can change throughout the day, as can where your story specifically goes in their newscast, because that's not set in stone until much later in the day, and obviously can always change due to breaking news. So always using what you know right now, and what we know right now in this example, you have a package that airs at 5 p.m. and a VOSOT at 6 p.m. So with that, let's generally backtime your day. And we'll start with the 6 p.m. newscast, where you're going to be ready to go live with your live VOSOT at 6 p.m. This means that your VOSOT has to have been sent to the station and put on the server, if for no other reason than producers and other people won't be freaking out that you haven't filed your story yet. And if you do it after 5:45, 5:50, they have great reason to be freaking out. So this gets us to 5:45 all the way to 5:15, the half-hour gap between shows. So what I would usually do is break down my package script to write that VOSOT that was happening at 6, and then also to edit that for air. And going back to something else that we touched on in much earlier videos, I would always try and pick a SOT that did not air in the package that just aired at 5. You'll get to the point where you can write VOSOTs very quickly, and also edit them just as quick. Now in terms of our timeline, this brings us to 5:15 to 5 o'clock, the actual newscast where you're standing by to go live with your package. And as we move earlier into the timeline, we have 4:45 p.m. where your package for the 5 o'clock newscast has to be sent to the station and then also put on the server. Again, so nobody's freaking out that this package isn't there. Now, it's very important here, and here's why. This is mission critical because your package is anywhere between a minute 15 to a minute 30 of airtime, in addition to your 15-second live intro, your 15-second live tag at the end of it, and also remember the 15-second anchor intro and possibly 5-second anchor tag to end everything. So when you add it all up, if you don't file on time, if you miss slot, so to speak, your story has to be what's called floated, meaning put later in the newscast. And this adds an exponential amount of stress to the producers, the anchors, and production, because that's a lot of elements to move so close to a newscast. Plus, remember, the producer put the stories in the order in the newscast in a very specific way. One of those reasons, newsworthiness. So you being floated just busted all of that. The major point here is obviously to file on time. And this brings us back to our timeline and to editing, for which you want at least an hour to do. So now we're at 4:45 p.m. coming down to 3:45 p.m. So I always aim to edit myself between 3 and 4:45. If I could somehow, on some of these days, wring out 2 hours to edit some of these pieces, which on many days was just a dream, that would be incredible. And this only works if you're filing from where you're going to go live. If you're not, if you're filing from the station, you have to budget in extra time to get out to your live shot. And a huge pro tip here, take into account how long it's going to take to get to your live shot in traffic, because you'll have to leave for it sometime after 4 p.m. You'll also want an hour to log your footage, write your story, and voice your story. So this brings us to 2:45 to 3:45 in our timeline, which means you have to be done shooting your story by 2:45 at the latest. In fact, you want to be done much earlier than that. I know plenty of one-person bands that their drop-dead deadline for shooting is 1:45, if not earlier. And this is probably as good of a time as any to bring up that what you're looking at here is just a plan. There are plenty of days. In fact, most days, reality will be much different. And reality will be different in incrementally different ways, so there is no blanket way to be able to predict what your day is going to be like. This is just a generalization because if you can get into these small blocks, these small pockets, you'll keep your sanity because you'll be organized and you'll have a good general idea of what should be happening. And just some of those other factors are, well, when could you get the first interview for your story? Because you're always at the mercy of people calling you back. Then, when they do, what time can they meet you? So a regular news day for me, the first thing I did before doing anything was put out the calls to the people first. Then I would actually start to go into deeper research about the story. I wanted the calls and the voicemails and the emails sent because then the ball was in their court to get back to me. And on some days, this also afforded me the chance to shoot some B-roll depending upon what the story was in advance if this opportunity was available. Here's an example. If the story was about construction traffic or holiday traffic, I'd go and actually get that while I was waiting for the state transportation official to get back to me with official numbers. While at the rest stop, I would talk to regular people and get the rest of my interviews as I was getting B-roll. And in some markets, a producer or an assignment desk editor, they may actually ask you to get sound with that official. Sometimes I did and just never used it, but used their information in my stories. Again, different stations and different markets run things differently. Regardless of what you think might be news or not, they still want you to sometimes do those things. And it goes without saying that not every story, in fact, most of your stories are not going to be this convenient. Because sometimes the B-roll is just boring office B-roll. But then there are the other times, the magical times where the video is of somebody doing something. And again, preferably when talking about active interviews, doing what it is that they're showing you that they're doing. That is always the most interesting video to put on the air. Now, when we're talking about all of this, obviously it goes without saying that breaking news and spot news can quickly and will throw a wrench into all of this. So again, this is just to give you a general idea of how a generalized day would go. And also, again, please think about how long it's going to take you to drive around to all the places that you have to get your video and your interviews and also to get to your live shot location. Also to know that there will be some days you may be required to file back at the station. So, this should all help you get a good handle on your day. And as always, as you're venturing out doing this, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'll see you in the next video.